Welcome to my channel, everyone. Today I'm going to offer 10 ways to find ideas for a fiction book. Scratch that video. It was way too long. So I'm going to split this episode into 2 parts. So welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to offer 5 ways to find ideas for your fiction book. In part 2 of this episode, I will offer 5 more. So come back this Friday for the rest of it. Hello everyone, my name is Shannon and I write under the pen name S.D. Houston. My debut novel, Blood of the Lily, which is based on Irish mythologies, will be coming out later this year and I'm very excited about it. So right now, I'm on this journey to self-publishing my first book. I finished writing it last year in November and I'm in the book launching phase right now with the published date of November 1st. As far as my credentials, I have a master's in writing, taught college English and literature for many years, as well as being a writing coach for students and writers all over the world. Plus, I've taught creative writing classes at my local library. It was very rewarding helping all these other people become better writers. However, that left little time for myself and for me to write, and that really is my true passion, is to write. When I decided to write full-time, I thought, well, what do I want to write? Especially considering the idea that I was going to write for income, because I had quit my jobs to become a full-time writer. So I needed something that I could actually sell. I had written a lot of stories and poems and nonfiction work and fiction, so I had a whole lot of ideas. If you watch my first episode in this series, then you know I considered writing something about the Fae world because that was what was trending at the time, but I discarded that idea and decided to write something that I would love and would be easier for me to write because I do love those ideas. However, I still had to figure out the main idea of what I was going to write. Here are 5 ideas I considered for my fiction writing. Guys, it's important to note that some of the things I'm going to offer here is working off other people's ideas or using real people. So you want to make sure you're fully aware of what the copyright laws are. Works published before 1926 are automatically considered part of the public domain, unless there are specific circumstances that have kept copyright protections in place. Writers can't legally put their own spin on a book until it's become part of the public domain, which means that the original author's intellectual property rights have expired. So make sure you do your research, and I have put a link in the box below to more information about copyright laws. You also want to be careful about using real people, because you could open yourself up to a lawsuit. But you're writing a fiction book, right? So you can just change the names of people, maybe the location, some small details. Either way, you make it fictional, and that way you won't have to worry about it. But in the end, you can also ask people if you can use them in your novels. Number 1, real life. Real life doesn't seem real sometimes when extraordinary things happen, like bizarre accidents, or take the idea of being stranded on an island. Real-life castaways never cease to amaze us. The story of Alexander Selkirk, the Scottish sailor who spent 4 years as a castaway, was the inspiration behind Daniel Defoe's novel Robinson Crusoe, as well as Gulliver's Travels. In 1980, British writer, adventurer Gerald Kingsland and 24-year-old Lucy Irvine lived as self-imposed castaways on an uninhabited island. Upon return to civilization after a year, Irvine wrote and published her account in Castaway in 1983, the story which inspired the Robert Zemeckis blockbuster film Castaway. Has anything interesting happened in your life or in the life of someone you know? Creating a story from your own experiences is a great way to craft an original narrative that you connect with on a deep emotional level. You might have a great story just waiting to be fictionalized. Just be sure to fictionalize any characters that are based on real people. Like I said before, maybe you change their names or you ask for their permission. Number 2, retellings. Retellings have been very popular in the publishing world for many years. This is where you deconstruct one of your favorite classic stories, and you tell it in a new way using a new idea or a twist on the old ideas. Take, for example, the story of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. There's a reason why this story has been retold so many times in the last few years. If you think about the character of Snow White, she has no agency whatsoever. She reacts to all the plot points as they happen to her instead of her making a decision and choosing her own path. The story provides excellent opportunity to show change in her character art while still staying true to the underlying story. Note again, guys, make sure you pay attention to the copyright laws before choosing a story. Fairy tales and other stories have come down through the centuries, and so they're not technically owned by anybody. So these are easy ones to choose to do a retelling. So for instance, say you want to do Jack and the Beanstalk. You should be in the clear as long as you're not copying someone else's work about Jack and the Beanstalk in their retelling. Number 3, video games. Some video games started off as books, such as The Witcher, which was written by Andrzej Sapkowski, if I'm saying it right, which started off as a collection of short stories, which now has been made into a TV show. But you can also write books based on the inspiration of video games, like Danica Davidson. She is the author of Escape from the Overworld, a book inspired by Minecraft, the beloved Lego-like building game. But you do have to be careful with this one as well, as copyright laws do apply. Just make sure to do your research, ask for permissions if you need to, or make the story yours by putting your own twist on the theme, motifs, characters, whatever you have to do to make it yours. With Danica Davidson's book, her publisher actually worked out the rules and copyrights ahead of time so that she could write her game-inspired novel. However, it doesn't mean that you can't be inspired by video games. For instance, I played Rise of Kingdoms a couple years ago, and I thought the backstory on one of the characters, Lohar, was really interesting. And it wasn't a whole lot there, but my mind just went, and I started thinking about, well, what if this happened? And what if, this happened to this part here? And so I actually started creating like a whole story of Lohar's background. And of course, if I ever wanted to write that idea, I would have to change his name and make sure that his background doesn't too closely match the little bit that's on the game itself. Number 4, historical events. Here's one that you may not have to worry too much about copy infringement as you're writing about historical figures and events. One great example of someone who is inspired by historical events was George R.R. Martin in his series, A Song of Ice and Fire, which became, of course, Game of Thrones. If you didn't know, he used the inspiration of the War of the Roses for his novels. The War of the Roses were a series of 15th century English civil wars for control of the throne of England, fought between supporters of two branches of royalty, the House of Lancaster, represented by a red rose, and the House of York, represented by a white rose. Number 5, news stories and headlines. Retelling and adapting true stories is a time-tested method for fiction writers to produce quality fiction work. Read through the stories and headlines, listen to podcasts, blogs, vlogs, and journals. Collect a variety of stories, comb through each one, and make short notes of what catches your interest. When you have your list complete, then read through all of it and see which one seems like it could be a good story. This is where you want to let questions flood you, like why and what if. Very, very important questions to get your imagination going. And if none of the ideas are big enough to have legs to stand on their own, then think about combining some of the ideas that you have. See if you can create a narrative summary out of everything. For more ideas on finding inspiration from news articles, read JRB's article on the Writing Cooperative, and I've put the link for the article down in the description box below. To recap, the first 5 ways to find ideas are real life, retellings, video games, historical events, and news stories and headlines. In part 2 of this episode, I will reveal 5 more ideas I had considered for finding my story idea, and I will discuss which one I used for my debut novel. I would love to know your thoughts and comments on which ways you think would work for you, or which ones would definitely not. Please comment below. And if you're new here, welcome. Please consider subscribing. I will be posting part 2 of this episode this Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will be around for the first half hour to answer any questions or comment to any of your comments that you leave. So if you like this content here on YouTube, please consider supporting me. You can do that by hitting the thumbs up button, hitting the subscribe button, or the bell icon to notify you when the next episode is posted. Any and all of this supports me here to help me grow. And it also lets me know that you like this content and you want more of it. Thanks for watching this first part in my second episode of How to Write a Fiction Book series. If you want to stay up to date with everything I'm doing, please consider subscribing to my newsletter. Newsletter subscribers receive access to the first chapter of my debut novel, Blood of the Lily, along with other exclusives and giveaways. Again, if you like what you saw in this content today, please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for hanging out with me through this episode, and happy writing.